Hello, Sudoku friends, and welcome to a New York Times Hard Sudoku. Again, today a little different because today I want to demonstrate how I use pencil marks most of the time. And I want to also to demonstrate how not to do it. I know that beginner solvers, when they see a puzzle like this, they start to enter a lot of pencil marks. And the worst thing you can do is do this. This is terrible, because this will obscure the real digits that you are going to need for each cell. You will spend a lot of time, for example, to figure out that these three cells, they have to be 4, 3, and a 9, and therefore you can't have a 4 and a 3 and a 9 in these two cells and in this cell. Meaning that now you will have to waste a lot of time removing unnecessary and superfluous pencil marks from all the other cells. So this is definitely not the way to go about it. Instead, what I propose is to start by not using any pencil marks, but just to go by natural numbers, because you can usually find a lot of singles that you can just enter. For example, this cell here has got to be a 1, doesn't it? Because of the 1 here and here. There's no reason to enter a lot of pencil marks in a cell that you can immediately see can only take one single digit. You might as well just enter it. At the same time, you could enter a lot of pencil marks in these two cells because, as you can see, you still need to fill in 5 digits for this row. But if you think a little bit about it, you can see that this 4 here blocks these 3 cells, right? And this 4 blocks these 2 cells. And therefore, a 4 will need to go in one of these 2 cells. And because of a 4 in one of these 2 cells and this 4, now all of these 5 cells are blocked from containing a 4. And you even have a 4 up here, and that blocks these 3 cells. So you can immediately see that a 4 for this row must go here. There's just no other place it can go. So if you go about a puzzle, at least the beginnings of a puzzle in this way, you will maintain your sanity and you won't pollute the puzzle with a lot of unnecessary pencil marks. A more elegant way of figuring out what these 3 cells need to be, and I believe they were a 4, 3, and a 9, if I remember correctly. Look at the 2, 1, and a 5 here. We need to find homes for 2 and a 5 and a 1 in this column. And clearly they can't go in these 3 cells, can they? So exactly 3 digits are missing. And this is the 1 cell, and this is a cell, and this is a cell. So these 3 cells will have to be a 2, 1, and a 5 in some order. And we can actually find out where the 5 will go because we have a 1 and a 2 already in this row. So the 5 will need to go here. And while we are looking at the 5s, we can see that this 5 now blocks these 2 cells, and the 5 here blocks these 3 cells. And so we can immediately place a 5 in this cell, like so. And now we scan a little bit further to the right, and we can see that these 2 5s block these 4 cells from containing a 5, and the 5 here blocks these 3 cells, and again leaving only 1 cell. This is a lot faster than having to remove a lot of superfluous pencil marks that you entered because you didn't understand how to use pencil marks. Now continuing with the 5, here's a 5, and here's a 5, and here's a 5, and that puts a 5 in this cell. And we can find a 5 for this cell because of the 5 here and here. And we have a 5 in this row already, so the 5 will need to go here, and that gives us a 5 for this cell, because now we have a 5 here and a 5 here, and they block these 3 cells from being a 5, and we got these 2 5s, they block these 4 cells from being a 5. So a 5 will need to go here, and that's, I think, is it for the 5s for this puzzle. And while I'm just looking at the puzzle, I can see that a 1 won't be able to go in this cell, nor will it be able to go here or here. So I know immediately that a 1 for this column 8 will need to go in one of these two cells. And while I instinctively know this, I also know now that a 1 cannot go anywhere else in this 3 by 3 block. Some of you have said that I must have an enormous memory, but really I don't, because as soon as you familiarize yourself with a puzzle like this, you keep all of these numbers and all the possibilities in your short-term memory. And after you solve the puzzle, you forget all about it. It's not something that you keep in long-term storage. So now that I know that a 1 will have to go here or here, I won't have to analyze that later on in the game. I just remember it. I notice that these two fours, they already occupy, of course, rows 1 and 3. Now, where can we put a 4 in row 2? It can't go here or in these two cells, of course, and it can't go here because of the 4 down here in the corner. So this is where the 4 goes. And we can put a 7 in this cell, can't we? Because of this 7 here and the 7 here. That leaves only this cell for a 7. And now I know that one of these two cells will have to be a 7, don't I? Because this cell can't be a 7 because of the 7 here. So one of these two cells will have to be a 7. And I know that this cell will have to be a 2, or this cell will have to be a 2. It's just something that I don't really think a lot about when I uh, look at the puzzle. It's something that just registers, and I keep it in short-term memory. And I'll show you why, because the 2 here automatically gives me a 2 for this cell or for this cell. And since I have a 2 already in this row, so the only two cells available for this column and for this 3 by 3 box is going to be this cell and this cell. These two cells can't be a 2 because of the 2 here, and these two cells can't be a 2 because of the ghost 2 in this cell or in this cell. So a 2 here and a 2 here gives me a 2 here or here. So while I think about that and while I know that, I automatically register a possibility of a 2 going either here or here because it can't go here. We have a 2 up here, see? So now I know that this cell or this cell will have to be a 2. And I also know that a 7 will have to go in this cell or in this cell because of the 7 over here and the 7 looking down from up here. These two cells can potentially contain a 7. No other cells in this 3 by 3 block. And while I'm talking, I notice the 3 here and the 3 here and the 3 here. They put a 3 in this cell. And I now know that these two cells will have to be a 2 and a 9 because this cell will have to be a 7. The 7 here and the 7 here mandate a 7 in this cell. And now that we have this 7 up here that can block these two cells, and we have the 7 here that blocks these two cells, we know that a 7 will have to go here. Now, one of these two cells will have to be a 7. It's not important for me to know right now which one of these cells will have to be a 7. I just remember for later that one of these will have to be a 7. And because of my previous analysis, I now remember again that one of these two will have to be a 2, and the two other cells will have to be a 6 and a 9. And because of the 6 here, I know now that the other digit for these two cells will have to be a 6. and therefore this cell must be a 9. There's just no way around it. And since we have a 2 and a 9 up here, and we have this 9 now, this is the only cell that can contain a 9 in this column. And these two being 2 and 6 leaves just this cell, and that's got to be a 4, of course. Now, these two being 2 and 9, that makes this an 8 and a 6, doesn't it? And these three will have to be a 2, 4, and a 7 now. There's a 2 and a 7 in this row, so the 4 obviously will have to go here. And these two now have to be a 2 and a 7 in some order. And remember that we needed a 1, 2, and a 5 for this column. We found the 5 because we had a 1 and a 2 in this row already. So we know now that this cell will have to be a 1 or a 2, and so will this one. So if these are a 1 and a 2, what are these three then? They have to be a 3, 4, and a 9, don't they? We have a 4 and a 9 in the row, therefore this cell must be a 3. And these are now 4 and 9. And if these are 4 and 9, what are these three then? They're 6, 7, and 8, aren't they? Unfortunately, I can't use that information for anything at the moment, except I know that these two have to be a 7. One of these two will have to be a 7, so this is a 6 or an 8. And that means that a 1 will have to go over here in one of these cells. And as I discussed before, this cannot be a 1, so one of these will have to be a 1. Oh, I can place a 1. Of course I can place a 1, because the 1 here limits a 1 for this column to this cell or to this cell. So a ghost 1 in this column, and this one here, and this one here, that gives me a 1 for this cell. So now this is a 6 or an 8, and this is a 6 or an 8. I'm not lost at this point, but maybe you are if you're a beginner. So what I want to do now is show you how I would use pencil marks. The usual recommendation by most solvers online is to use the Snyder notation. And the Snyder notation means that if a number can go exactly twice inside a 3 by 3 block, then we are permitted to enter them as pencil marks. Let me demonstrate. The one here and the one here allows a 1 to go here or here as a pencil mark. And let's see what else we have. Well, we have the 4 here, and we have the 4 here, and we have the 4 here. So one of these cells will have to be a 4. And over here, one of these cells will have to be a 4. Then we remember that these two cells had to be a 2 and a 9 in combination, and these would have to be a 6 or an 8. So they are easy enough. So these two cells also had to be a 6 or an 8. We don't know the order yet, but we know that the only two numbers that can go in these two empty cells have to be a 6 and an 8. And as we recall, this must be a 1 or this must be a 1. We could go through all the numbers 1 through 9, and well, for the sake of good order, let's do that. We cannot place any more 1s, but let's see about the 2s. Of course, we can place a 2 either here or here, and we can place a 2 and a 6 here, and we can place a 2 and a 6 here, because we found that out earlier, didn't we? Now, I think that's it for the 2s. Yes, and now the 3s. Let's see, a 3 here and a 3 here. No, yeah, we got a 3 and a 3 here, and we got a 3 up here. So one of these would have to be a 3, right? What did the 2 do here? I didn't. I didn't put a 2 here. So more threes, yes. The 3 here and the 3 here and the 3 here would give us a pencil mark for a 3 here and here. But we can't put any pencil marks for a 3 in this box because of the 3 here still leaves 3 empty cells that could potentially be a 3. Now a 4, let's see, we did the 4s already, I think. Yes, the 5s. And the 5s are completed. The 6s, there's a 6 up here and there's a 6 down here. So this cell could be a 6 and this cell could be a 6. And we already have 2 potential 6s here. And we have 2 here, and that's all we can do with the 6s. Now on to the 7s. One of these 2 cells will have to be a 7, and we also already remember that one of these 2 cells would have to be a 7, don't we? And one of these 2 cells, of course, will have to be a 7. And now on to the 8. Let's see, 8s are a little bit more restricted, or less restricted, I should say, because the 8 here and the 8 here still leaves 3 cells that could take an 8. And we know that this cell or this cell would be an 8, don't we? And we cannot put an 8 pencil mark in these 3 cells because an 8 could potentially go in all 3. Now the 9s, let's see, 9s. There isn't really a lot we can do with the 9s. We only got 2 9s in the grid and we got 2 potential 9s up here. So this is how far the Snyder notation will take us. And in my experience, if a puzzle gets more than just a little bit complicated, I have to say that this isn't, but this is purely for demonstration purposes. If a puzzle gets a little bit difficult and complicated, then the Snyder notation will not get you all the way. So what you need to do, or what I need to do, and this is my personal preference, is I now look at all cells that can take exactly 2 values. I don't particularly care if those 2 values all are in the same block, but they have to be, of course, in the same row or in the same column or in the same block. Let me demonstrate what I mean. This row here still lacks a 6, 8, and a 9. And I can't actually input anything here because all 3 values could potentially go in all 3 cells. So this row I wouldn't touch. Now let me look at this row down here. This row still needs a 1, 2, and a 3, doesn't it? Well, we got a 1 and a 2 here, so just by thinking about this, we found a 3. And that means that this cell now can't be a 3. This is one aspect of the Snyder notation that you will find will help you. If you already input the 2 possible values for this block, and now one value has been eliminated by this 3, then we can remove this pencil mark and we can now enter the large digit here. It's got to be a 3. And now we have these 2 cells. This could be a 1 and this could be a 1, but they could also both be a 2. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to input pencil marks. So this could be a 1 or a 2 and this could be a 1 or a 2, right? Let's see what else we got. Let's look at column 9 now. We need for column 9 still a 6, 8, and a 9. And again, all 3 values could potentially go in all 3 cells. So I'm not going to input anything there at this time. But for column 1, we still need to find a 6, 7, 8, and a 9. I can see a 6 and a 7 here, and they block this cell from anything but an 8 or a 9. and 8 can't go here. So, and that is about all I can say about this column. But as we recall, these two cells can only be a 3, 4, and a 9, these three cells. And we already found the 3. So these two cells will have to be a 4 or a 9. And that means that a 9 can no longer be a candidate for this cell. And this 9 blocks this cell. Therefore, we now know that this cell is a 7 or a 9, and this cell is a 7 or a 9. And that automatically makes this cell a 1 or a 2, and the cell up here a 1 or a 2. And what's more, having filled these two cells with candidates, we still have this cell to fill, and this now can only be a 2 or a 6. Since we did find the 3 here, we can eliminate the 3 from this cell here. And the only other 3 pencil mark we had from earlier was here. Therefore, this now becomes a 3. And as soon as we remove the 4 as a candidate, because we replace it with a big number, the 3, then this must automatically become a large number, namely a 4. And the 4 here now and the 4 here gives us this 9 and this 4. And now one of these two cells will have to be a 9, won't it? So let's just input the pencil marks for it, like so, 9 and 9. And now when we look at the 3 remaining digits for this column 9, we notice that we still need to find a 6, 8, and a 9. The 9 here prevents this cell from being anything but a 6 or an 8. And look at that, we have a 6 and an 8 already in this cell here. And that is one of the advantages that I personally find very good when I use this kind of a notation. That is to fill a cell with 2 values if exactly 2 values are candidates for that cell. Not 3, not 4, but 2. So now that we have this pair in this cell, we know that the other digit here, of course, will have to be a 2. And since there's a 2 here, that gives us a 2 for this cell. And this now must be a 9. And the 2 here and the 2 here gives us a 2 for row 9, and it must go here. And that takes care of the 2 and the 7 pairs that we had here, right? So this is now a 2. And the 2 here and here, that gives us a 2 for this cell, and therefore this cell must be a 1, and we can remove this pencil mark 1 from this cell. And this cell now must be a 1, of course, and that makes this cell up here a 2. That takes care of the 2, 9 we had here, like so. And from earlier, we knew that this cell will have to be a 2 or a 6, and since the 2 is now taken, it becomes a 6. And since this 6 blocks this cell, we know that a 6 will have to go in one of these two cells. And therefore, a 6 can't go in this cell, which now becomes an 8, and the 6 will have to go here, won't it? And the 6 here gives us the 8 for this cell and the 6 for this one, and a 6 for this cell here. Now these two cells will have to be a 7 and an 8. And since we already have an 8 that blocks this cell, we know that the 7 goes here and the 8 here. Now the 8 here and the 8 here gives us an 8 for the top row. And because this cell was found to could contain only an 8 or a 9, and we've now taken the 8 away from that possibility, then this, of course, must be a 9. And the 9 up here resolves the 7 and the 9 pair here, like so. The last digit missing here is going to be a 6, and this one, therefore, is a 1, making this cell a 1. and the cell cannot be a 1 anymore. It has got to be a 6. So the only two cells that we miss here are going to be an 8 and a 9. We have an 8 already in this column, so therefore, of course, the 9 goes here and the 8 here. And the 8 here and here puts an 8 in the corner cell like so, and the last cell now has got to be a 9. These two cells are a 2 and a 7, and we have got a 7 in this row already. So the 2 goes here and the 7 here. I hope that I was able to demonstrate how I personally use pencil marks. And frankly, when I use pencil marks, I often totally dispense with the Snyder notation if it's a diabolical puzzle because it doesn't really bring me very far. What I do instead is, as I demonstrated, I input the two values that can go into a cell. And more often than not, that is sufficient for me to complete a puzzle. But to each his own. If you have a better way, you should use that. This is just the way that my mind works. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.